Alright, so here I am sketching in the first layer of the watercolor pencils for the water in the background. Going in with my lightest colors first, and then I'll go in and add in my darker colors. This initial layer, like I did in my last piece, is just to get the base color down, so that when I go back in with my markers later, I'm just darkening and saturating the colors up more. This way, most of my values are already established before I get into that phase. I'm going in with some greens because the dragon is going to be green. So that in the water, that there is a green dragon here. Again, going back in with some darker values now. I'm doing this on Bristol paper. It's a bit smoother than my last page. But I still want to make sure that my pencils are sharp for laying down color. Now I'm going in with one of my water brushes and activating the pencil. You can see that the colors get much richer once you add water to it. Just continuing to lay down color. You can see some of the green coming through there. Yeah, and here at the beginning I wasn't quite sure where my camera was. I changed the way I was doing the setup. So I'm sorry if some of this is off the screen. Now here we go. Now I'm going in with my Chameleon markers. Again, I am laying down my darkest value before I go and use the blending feature on these pens. That's why they're so long, because that blending chamber adds a whole nother chunk off the end of the pen. Again, going in with the darkest value there. Now, next time I did a piece, I'd probably do the full background in watercolor so I can get some really dark, rich water. This started looking more icy than watery towards the end. But that's okay. It's all a learning experience, right? Continuing to lay in some color. Now I'm using the blending feature here. This is for the lightest color in my water. So I'm making sure to capture my highlights and my shadows. So the one thing about these pens though is this step takes a long time because I had a large area to fill. And the pens the value change only lasts about 30 seconds. So you have to work in bits and pieces. But luckily these pens blend well wet to dry, so you don't get that sharp edge where you had a previous marker laid down. And now you've added in a new shade of marker. Just continuing to lay in color. You can see where I'm holding the pen off the side there too. Do this a lot during this step. This is the part that I say that I should have gone a little darker because my final setup with the water here is just a hair bit lighter than I'd really like it to be, but it's all right. Like I said, learning experience. And it's another case where I really should have pulled up a reference photo of water before I started doing this. See here I'm turning the page to the side because it was easier to get those motions with it turned sideways like this. I'm sorry if you hear any panting in this video. My service dog is currently attempting to sit on me. Had a bad health day the past couple days. And he is quite concerned. Right, Riddy? Yeah, concerned. No. Really? So again, continuing to lay in my values here. Notice I'm working in sections. Again, off the page a little bit. I'm sorry about that. Forgot that I turned it to the side and that, hey, it might be out of frame here. Now I'm going in with a true blue color to darken everything up. As I'm going with a straight color, I'm not doing any blending here. Again, it's one of those times where looking back, I'd probably just go ahead and do this in watercolor because this uses up a lot of ink to do this way. Again, working in sections so I don't end up with dramatic changes between each area. And out of frame again. I'll eventually get this right. Darkening up this whole section of water right there at the front. And putting in little dots of color where there's holes in his frill. Or her frill. Coming back in with my darker values. To darken up the water along their edges and towards the front here. And any areas where I have decided that the water should be darker. Continuing to go in and blend stuff out. And the one pen I don't tend to use with any of my markers is the Colorless Blender because that just tends to dilute your color some, which I already have that ability with the mixing chambers on these pens. It just tends to make the edges fuzzy is all I have found. Again, I want to stress the importance of bringing up a reference photo. So I didn't on this piece, and I should have, because I just haven't drawn water enough to have a good visual library of what it's supposed to look like. So next time I do water, I am going to bring up a reference photo or two to get an idea of what an animal moving through the water does to displace the water. And now I'm going back in with my colored pencils, and again, I'm out of frame. Now, part of this is I had an issue with moving film over from my camera to the computer because for some reason I stopped reading MOV files. But we will fix that at a later date. So I'm having to do most of the editing on my phone, which is not fun. And just darkening up things, capturing in the last bit of those details with my watercolor pencils. And again, you see, as soon as I add the water, the saturation value just climbs on these. Now I'm coming in with my white gel pen to add in some little highlights where the light source will be hitting the water. And now I'm going in and putting in some of the first shades on the dragon. Again, I'm starting with my lightest colors. So here I have a section that's going to be bright orange on the finished dragon. So I'm going in with my yellows first. Now I'm heading in with some oranges. And even some reds. Coming in with my water brush now. And again, you see how much it brings the saturation level up on those colors. Here I'm picking out all the pencils I'm going to need. Coloring in some of the smaller details, so like the horns and the teeth. And this is why I like the watercolor pencils versus working in straight watercolor, because I can control these little details so much easier. That's probably something that comes with time with working with real watercolor, but for now I'm happy with working with my watercolor pencils. Now I'm going in and again doing some of the small details, so the scales that are going to be a different color than the main body, and the fins here, or the frills. I'm going to have them doing a gradient from the dark green to the yellow. So I'm laying in my yellow first, and working towards the green. I'm starting to lay in some of the first shades of green here. Going back, I'd probably reverse the gradient that I did on the scales because it does make the shadows on the scales look a little bit wonky because green is a darker value than yellow, and it always will be. So it makes it look as if the scales that are sitting on top are actually underneath, which it should be reversed. Now I'm coming in with my darkest green. Sharpening my pencil a lot to make sure that I can get into those little nooks and crannies easily enough. And shading in some of the wing there. Going in now with some indigo just to really darken up those shadows. Now I'm going in with my water brush to blend out all the coloring there. I love these water brushes so much. They're so much fun to use. You can see what I was saying here about how that the gradient from yellow to green on the scales on his chest are making them look as if they're fading in upside down as opposed to the way that they should be, which is each scale starting at the top should be on top of the one below it. You can see the piece of paper that I have there as I'm wiping off some of the green because I don't want it to be going into I don't want it to be messing up the yellow. And now I'm coming in and laying down my first layers of the lightest shade for my green scales on the main part of the body. I'm doing little circular motions here. So that way it still gives the impression of scales without me having to go in and actually lay down individual scales here. Which I'm sure some people like to do. I just don't really like doing it that much. Coming in with a darker value now into the areas where there will be shadows. And I kind of like the look that I have here before I come in with the markers. It kind of feels kind of children's booky, or children's book-like, I guess is more of a correct way to phrase that. Which is something I've always wanted to do, is I've always wanted to work on children's books, but maybe if I had higher quality pencils, I'd be more apt to continue working on it that way. Excuse you, this is not yours. Again, sorry if you hear me talking to someone off in the corner. That would be my dog. He's got to involve himself. All right, now we're coming in with my water brush again to blend everything out. I really love the way this starts to look after you add the water. It gets that painterly look without having to be super painterly, which I really like. Because I wouldn't refer to myself as a painter. Now I'm coming in and adding details with my markers here, adding in some scale details. So I'm just doing little dots to give the impression of scales. Again, just enough to give the impression without actually having to go through and dot the whole thing. Because one, that would take a really long time. And two, I just kind of like the way that just the impression of scales looks. Coming in with a yellow now. Now I'm going in with another really dark blue to deepen my shadows. Going in and doing the same on the eyes here. So I really wanted that red to really stand out. And I'm going in with some purple because the opposite on the color wheel of yellow is purple. So to really darken that shadow up, purple makes a good choice. I'm going in with my white gel pen to bring some areas forward. Add in some highlights. Now I'm taking my white gouache here and doing the same thing to add some highlights in with the scales, because this is going to stand out more than my white gel pen is. The white gel pen works best whenever you are working with just straight markers. When there's colored pencil in there, then it doesn't tend to work as well. Going back in with my regular pen to bring those frills forward and to make sure I didn't lose my line work. All right, and that was my water dragon. I hope you all enjoyed watching this. It was a lot of fun to do. And you can find this full piece on my FA gallery. And I may be also putting prints up available on Redbubble or Society6. Just deciding which one I want to do right now. All right, thank you for watching and have a nice day.